and welcome to CUTV's NHL Playoff Preview Show. I'm your host, Allison Steinheiser, and alongside me, two guys who have been doing this for a couple of years now too, Andy Hughes and Scott Majesky. And I know personally this is probably one of my favorite shows that we do all year, and I think you guys would agree.
Yeah, certainly. It's always fun to talk about hockey, and we know our hockey. We've talked about this the past few years. We haven't been as accurate as we'd like to probably, but maybe this is a different year.
There's nothing better than the Stanley Cup playoff time here in spring, April, and May. With the NHL lockout, we've had to bump it back a couple of weeks, but hey, that's all right. It's still coming. That's all that matters. I'm excited to get the third edition of this show started.
Absolutely, and we are going to get started here with our first round matchup. It's going to be in the East, the top-seeded Pittsburgh Penguins and the 8th-seed New York Islanders. We weren't sure until late last night who was going to play the Penguins, but it is going to be the Islanders. And Andy, you got a couple players to watch for us.
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously, we don't know if Sidney Crosby is going to be coming back. But I do think you have to watch for Evgeny Malkin here. You're looking at matchups here. And if you have to worry about the Crosby line, you're going to have to worry about that Malkin line too. And I'm not sure if the Islanders have the depth to do that. Now with Chris Kunitz and James Neal back with Evgeny Malkin, I think that may put Malkin back into his old form that we saw last year when he won the MVP. And with the Islanders, it's all about John Tavares. I mean, this guy only had 2 points against the Penguins in 5 meetings this year, but I think this is a guy you have to watch out for on this young Islander squad. He's going to be the leader out there, and they're going to count on him if they have any chance in this series.
Andy, I couldn't agree with you more with the John Tavares player to watch. You know, the guy's got 47 points this year. Look at Matt Molson, the other player on that team. It's a good first line the Islanders have, but the only problem is they don't have the depth to compete with the 4-line deep of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But, you know, for the Penguins, I got to go with Jarome Iginla, guys. The man went to the Stanley Cup Finals before the first lockout in 2004, and they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning, sad there, but now he's got a chance for a cup run, so you know he's motivated. He's got that leadership. And because he's got that leadership and he's motivated, it shouldn't be too hard of a series for the Penguins here in round one.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you on the John Tavares for the New York Islanders. It's his first playoff series. He's still a young kid. We'll have to see how he can do. Another player, though, Marc-Andre Fleury. The Penguins are a team that I think can go very far. Fleury hasn't had his strongest performances these past couple years during the playoffs, and if the Penguins are to go far, they're going to need him to win a couple of games, and it might not be this series, but I think this series could really help Fleury with his confidence and allow him to just explode during this entire postseason.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, you have Thomas Vokoun to push him back there as well. He's going to have a little bit more pressure this year, but Marc-Andre Fleury's had probably one of his most consistent regular seasons this year. He bailed the Penguins out a lot, and to win games in the playoffs, you got to have good goaltending. There's no way around that.
Yeah, your teams get hot with the goaltending here. It's hopefully that Brooks Orpik can get back and healthy for this team because defense does win championships, that old adage there. But, you know, I like their first-round matchup against the Islanders. Should be a rather easy one for the Penguins because of the depth they have. And if you can get through the Islanders quickly, more rest for number 87 to come back.
Yeah, and also the Penguins have never beaten the Islanders in a playoff series. Last time they played in 1993, and I think most Penguins fans will remember that game with Kevin Stevens breaking several bones in his face. But personally, I believe the Penguins are going to win this one. I think it's going to be in 5. I think it's going to be a fairly easy series. And like you said, Scott, get some rest for some of the injured.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I have 5 games as well. You just look at the matchups like I was saying. I mean, the Penguins may have Jussi Jokinen on the 4th line right now. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And then, you know, I think special teams is going to be huge in this series. I mean, if the power play can get going for the Islanders, Penguins could be in trouble. But they've done a pretty good job of limiting them this year. They're 4-1 against the Islanders this season. So I think it's going to come down to special teams. But, I mean, how many weapons does that team have on the power play for the Penguins there? You have Iginla. And I think Iginla brings that type of Sergei Gonchar presence on the power play there with that huge slap shot. So Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin are definitely looking for him. So I think that'll make the difference in the series. And I think the Penguins will win in 5.
Yeah, the only way, I'll agree with you guys on 5 as well, but the only way this one can go 6, I think, or 7 possibly, is if Nabokov plays out of his mind for this series. And also the power play and penalty kill, which can be really good for the Islanders at times, is peaking at 100%. Also, a lot of people will say, well, the Islanders don't have any experience, and they're just young, and they're just out there having fun. But that can be pretty dangerous, too, because they don't really know this type of atmosphere. So they might just be out there having fun, And that always could be dangerous, but Pens in 5.
All right, our next matchup, the 2-7 seeds, Montreal Canadiens winning the conference, playing against conference rival. It should be great up there in Canada, the Ottawa Senators, and that is a matchup that you may see an upset in, as there are quite a few good players. Andy, who are your players to watch?
Well, I think for Ottawa, you have to look at Erik Karlsson. I mean, the guy had a terrible injury to his Achilles from Matt Cook and came back, a miracle-like recovery. I'm interested to see if he holds up during the series. He obviously could have won the Norris had he not gotten injured. And then the other side, one of the Norris candidates, I think, PK Subban from Montreal. That guy is a stud. He's a guy that he brings some physical aspect of the game, but also can get a lot of points. He was tied for Chris Letang among most points among defensemen. So I think those two guys you have to watch because those two guys are great defenders. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a really good series, and I honestly think it could go either way. I do see it going 6 or 7 games probably, though.
Agree with you 100% on the Montreal player to watch there, Andy. PK Subban, a Norris Trophy candidate. He's a great player, and if he wants to get that great player status, he needs to carry them through this postseason. And then I'm going Craig Anderson for the Ottawa Senators. A 1.69 goals against, 12 wins on the season, 3 shutouts for the Senator netminder. You know, hot goaltenders can carry teams, and if he's been hot this season, let's see if he continues that through this postseason. This will be a great series. Canada, all about hockey. Should be a fun one.
And they're not that far apart either geographically, so definitely some intense rivalries there. Andy, I agree with you. I think Erik Karlsson is really going to be your player to watch for the Ottawa Senators. As you said, he's coming back from a major injury. Nobody thought he would be back this quick, and you thought the Senators were just going to collapse. They sneak into the playoffs. Anything can happen. But with Montreal, I'm going to say Carey Price. He's been shaky down this stretch. And there's a lot of pressure up in Montreal, especially whenever you're playing the Senators. And that could be a lot of pressure for a young goaltender who hasn't won a whole lot in his career. He has a little bit, but both of these teams, I don't think anybody really expected them to be in the playoffs playing each other in the first round.
No, I certainly didn't. I mean, Erik Karlsson, when he went down, then Jason Spezza went down, Craig Anderson went down with an ankle injury. I thought Ottawa was done. Paul McLean's done a great job up there in Ottawa coaching this team back into the playoffs here. It's going to be interesting, though. Erik Karlsson, there's a lot of good storylines in this series. Carey Price, we'll see what Anderson can do. Hasn't had much playoff experience at all. So, but you remember Montreal last time they beat the Penguins, they had Halak in. So we'll see if Price can make that kind of a run. But Montreal kind of faltered during the second half of the season, so that'll be another interesting thing to watch and could allow Ottawa to win this series.
Who do you think wins the series?
I do have Montreal prevailing in 7 games, but like I said, I do think Ottawa is going to make a run for Montreal's money, but I think the Canadiens will come out on top.
Andy, I see your Montreal in 7, and I'm going to say Montreal in 6 because I think they'll be able to pull it out in 6 over Ottawa, and I think Carey Price is really going to come on strong in this first series. I really do like this matchup. I think it's going to be a great playoff series. Not the best one in the Eastern Conference, but one of the top ones to watch out for because it's Canada. They're so close to each other, the rivalry and everything. I think Montreal's just a little bit better than Ottawa. Even when Montreal is slumping, they're just a little bit better than Ottawa.
I think Ottawa's going to win in 7, and I think it's your player to watch. I really think Craig Anderson can make the difference. Like you said, anytime you have a hot goalie, that can make a big difference, and we'll have to see how Carey Price, who, as I said, isn't that old, can handle this pressure because if they lose if they lose the first or the second game in Montreal, the fans are going to be all over him.
Yeah, they certainly will be.
Our next playoff series, another intriguing one, the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers, 2 very, very, very talented teams that maybe underachieved just a little bit, but once the new season starts, really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it was an interesting year for both these teams. I mean, New York was expected to be among the top in the Eastern Conference, and they really didn't meet expectations. They're in the playoffs, though. That's all that matters. And the Capitals, man, they struggled early on, but really surged in the second half with the likes of Alex Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, and Mike Green all contributing to that. And as far as my player to watch for Washington, it all starts and ends with Alex Ovechkin. I mean, if the guy performs, he's going to be the best guy in Washington. If he doesn't, everybody's going to be talking about it. So it starts with him. And then for the New York Rangers, I think there's a lot of different guys, but I think Rick Nash has got to be the player to watch. Brought him over from Columbus. He's supposed to be the big acquisition. This is going to be his first time really getting into some postseason play. So it'll be interesting to watch if he can lead this Rangers team, because they did lose Gabrick. They did get Ryan Clough. So Rick Nash is definitely going to have to step up his game in the playoffs if the Rangers are going to go long. And also you have to fear Henrik Lundqvist if he gets going. That's a guy you have to fear in the playoffs.
You know, Andy, I am extremely excited for this playoff series to begin, because I think it's going to go 7. Both these teams coming in hot going into the playoffs. A lot of expectations from the New York Rangers. Now they're playing like the New York Rangers we all thought they would. And the Washington Capitals struggling at first. Alexander Ovechkin, everyone thinking, oh, he's not playing very well. Well, he had a heck of a March and heck of an April. And then Holtby, the sophomore season for him, a little bit of slump start to the season, but he's played really well. And that's why he's my player to watch starting these playoffs. Holtby, second time through. They lost to the New York Rangers in the second round last year, so let's see if he can avenge that. I'm going to go Ryan Callahan, the captain for the Rangers, 31 points, along with Rick Nash with 42 points for this team. I like the New York Rangers in this matchup because they have that talent, and also because if Holtby can get hot and play really well, and they got the defense to back him up, then they'll be good. But the Rangers got too much firepower, and you can't go against King Henry.
That, I think, is going to be the X factor, is how Henrik Lundqvist plays, and that's why he's my player to watch for the New York Rangers. On the other side, of course, you got to go with the captain, Alex Ovechkin. A lot of pressure this year because everybody said he had slipped, and then he comes back in March and April, plays absolutely incredible. But I think a lot of people are going to look to see if he can play in a playoff environment where they're not going to be able to play run and gun hockey. They're not going to be able to just score 10 goals a game and only give up 9. Because Henrik Lundqvist is going to be a player that could really shut down this team, and the Rangers have enough talent in general that I don't think they should be this low to begin with. They can't be happy with that, and they're really a low seed that I think could make a run and possibly go to the Cup final.
Yeah, they're definitely one of the few lower seeds that could come out and go on a deep run, because they do have Henrik Lundqvist. When they did trade Gabrick, they got much tougher to play against, which is a big need, and I think the Penguins did the same thing. They need to be a team that's tougher to play against. So the Rangers did that. I think that helps them out a lot, and I think that's why they're going to take this series in 7 games. We saw a large series between these two last year. I think it'll be the same thing again, 7 games.
I'm hoping for 7, with 3 of those games at least going to overtime, because I think this series is probably going to be the best series out of the first round. And I'm going to go Rangers in 7 just because you got Henrik Lundqvist. I'm going goaltending-wise, and I'd take Henrik Lundqvist over Holtby any day. And I'm all about the Rangers in 7.
Well, we're all in agreement with that. I think it's going to be Rangers in 7 too. And I think this is the series with the most talent on both sides of the puck. I mean, you could go on and on and on with the amount of all-stars that are on both of these teams. And you have a great coach in John Tortorella that is going to be able to match up against Ovechkin. Plus, as you said, you have Lundqvist. So I really think the Rangers are going to come out on top. But it should be a very entertaining series.
Yeah, and you make a good point about the coaching there. John Tortorella's already won a Stanley Cup. Adam Oates is in his first year as an NHL head coach. So that's a big difference in experience there.
And one of the best things about this series is they've been playing playoff hockey since the beginning of April, both these teams. So they're ready to go.
They are ready to go, and we have one more game in the Eastern Conference to finish out here. The 4th match of the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Once again, this Northeast Division really doing well this year, which is a little bit of a surprise. I don't think anybody expected the Leafs to make the playoffs and have a chance as a 5 seed. Have to see what they're able to do against the big bad Bruins, though. Yeah,
the Bruins had another great year, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are another team that I don't think anyone really expected to go far. You look at teams like Carolina, Tampa Bay, they don't make it, and then teams like Toronto and Ottawa make it. Huge surprise, though, but for my player to watch here for Boston, it has to be Tyler Seguin. I know that they have Zdeno Chara, they have all these other guys, but they are a little older, and I think Boston's going to kind of have to rely on some of their younger guys to step up. And Tyler Seguin had a great year this year, so I think he's definitely got to be a guy to watch here for the Boston Bruins. I think a lot of guys, Toronto, you see James Van Riemsdyk, he's picked up his game a lot. Great year this year after coming over from Philadelphia. So there's really a lot of guys from Toronto that I would watch, but I think James Van Riemsdyk is definitely one of them because of his goal-scoring ability, and they're definitely going to need him to pull out in this series.
Andy, you're talking about goal scoring. I'm going to talk about the guys who are stopping those goals from going to the net for both these teams. I'm going to Tuukka Rask from Boston because This is his time to shine right now. Tim Thomas was the goaltender of choice in Boston for so many years. Now it's Tuukka Rask's turn to make some noise. The guy on the year, 5 shutouts and 19 wins in 39 games of play for Tuukka Rask. I think he's got himself a good task to go. You got Marchand and Krejci for Boston on the offensive side, too. They've put up some pretty good numbers, too. It's a Boston team that likes to distribute the scoring. A lot of people score for Boston. So we'll see. They got Jágr now, so we'll see how that goes for Boston. But in all seriousness, though, I'm looking at the goaltenders for Toronto on that side. Reimer, their goaltender, he's decent this year. He's something you got to look out for because Toronto, it's such a great hockey town, Canada, and it's the first time they've been in the playoffs for so long. So I'm going Reimer there for Toronto. But I'm picking Boston in this game, and I know I'm going ahead of myself right now. But I think Boston is going to play inspired in this series because of everything that has happened in the city of Boston over the past month. And Tuukka Rask, I think, will be very inspired in between those pipes.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And my player to watch for Boston has to be Brad Marchand. He is a talented player, but sometimes he's been a little bit undisciplined. Yeah. How is the pressure in the hockey mecca, basically, of the world in Toronto going to affect him? Because you know the pressure's on. You know he's going to want to outperform, and can he deal with it? Another one, Nazem Kadri, I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see how he performs his first time. They brought him along very slowly, but it seems like it's worked so far. I don't know if it's going to work in the playoffs or not, if he's going to be prepared, or if he's just going to be somebody that fizzles out, because he has been a huge part of them. And another interesting thing is Phil Kessel did not talk to the media today. They had the reporters at his locker, and he said he wasn't talking today. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because he eliminates the distraction. But in Toronto, if they get down a game or two, it's not going to be good for Toronto.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. And, Nazem Kadri did really come out of nowhere. I mean, this guy was drafted, I think, in the first round in 2009. Just brought up really, really slowly. Finally, kind of filling his potential this year. He's had a great season. We'll see if he can carry that into the playoffs. But very interesting there with Phil Kessel. Yeah. He's one of the leaders on that team, and they're definitely going to need him. And they need him to be focused. They need the whole team to be focused. There's a lot of pressure there in Toronto, so they're going to be under the microscope that whole series. That's for sure.
Yep, I mean, I totally agree with everything you just said, Andy. In Toronto, they're always under the microscope for that hockey team, no matter what, and they're always under pressure. And good to see Toronto back in the playoffs because hockey needs Toronto in the playoffs. Yeah,
but I think Boston does eventually take the series against Toronto there. So I think it'll be in 6 games.
I'm going to go 5 games. Boston take it over the Maple Leafs because I don't think the Maple Leafs are ready. Yeah. Now, it's good that they're in, but I don't think they're ready for the playoffs. So I'm going to go 5 for Boston because Zdeno Chara, the captain, and then you got the additions of Jágr. And I think the team, just a great team-oriented team. And they're kind of reminding me of the guys that made the run in 2011.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you guys. I think it's going to be Boston in 6. I don't think Toronto's ready, but I think it's going to be a good learning experience for all of those players to see what the playoffs are like in Toronto.
Yeah, and the Islanders will learn about the playoffs too. Yes, they haven't been in there, so those 2 teams both will be having some learning experiences this year.
There's another team out west that's going to be having some learning experiences very early. We're going to look at the Western Conference side of the bracket coming up next right here on CUTV.
CUTV is always on the air online. Like us on Facebook for upcoming events and status updates. Follow us on Twitter at CUTV_PA for behind-the-scenes exclusives. For streaming news and sports coverage, subscribe to our YouTube channels. CUTV social media. It's always online.
NHL playoff preview show. Guys, we already talked about the Eastern Conference half of the bracket. Now we're going to go ahead and jump over to the West, where the Chicago Blackhawks, they've been dominant for the majority of the year. Nobody's really been able to touch them at all. And they're facing off against a team that, although I would love to see win, I really don't think it's going to. The Minnesota Wild, they kind of backed into the playoffs a little bit. They were able to get the win the last day of the regular season, one of the very last games played. But it came awful close, and they were leading the division at the beginning of April.
Yeah, they had a great start for the Minnesota Wild, and then they just started to fall out. I'm really disappointed in this Minnesota Wild team because of all the acquisitions that they made over the offseason, and then they got a couple big players at the trade deadline. And, it's really disappointing because Mike Yeo was a coach I actually did like for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I was kind of disappointed he left, but he always had that dream of being a head coach, and who doesn't when you're making it all the way up to being an assistant coach in the NHL. But for me, players to watch in this series, Parise and Sutter for the Minnesota Wild, because they were so hyped going into the offseason, and the big prizes of the offseason. They both go to the same team. Everyone's expecting them to do well. And for Minnesota, they just sneak in at that last second over the Columbus Blue Jackets for that 8th spot. And then for the Blackhawks, boy, have they been good this year. You got Corey Crawford, I think will probably be their starting goaltender for the first round. And then my player to watch, my boy Patrick Kane. Boy, is he good for the Blackhawks. Assists galore for Patrick Kane. Guys, I'm going to tell you his assist totals to his goals. He has 55 points this year. 32 assists, 23 goals. Boy, does he like to pass the puck. Very smooth player out there. Great ice vision. And you got Jonathan Toews, Marian Hossa, Duncan Keith. Need I say more about the Chicago Blackhawks? Number 1 seed President's Trophy winners.
Yeah, you talked about all the guys, Kane, Toews, Keith. My player to watch for the Blackhawks is a young guy, Brandon Saad. He is a rookie, but he is a guy that they give him a great opportunity this year. He's been in the top 6 for them, so they're going to count on him. Obviously, the other teams are going to know who to match up against. They're going to be looking at Kane, Toews. You're going to need those other guys to chip in. I think Brandon Saad is going to be a guy that you definitely got to watch. And, as far as Minnesota, I agree with you. I think Zach Parise has got to be the guy to watch. Ryan Suter was a great acquisition as well. He's definitely in the conversation for the Norris. But they're going to rely on Zach Parise for his experience last year. He was a captain for the New Jersey Devils in the finals last year. So that experience is going to be huge for that Wild team. They haven't been in the playoffs in a while either. So I think Parise's leadership and his on-ice performance is definitely going to be huge for the Wild if they're going to take charge in this series.
I agree with you completely on your players to watch. I think Wampum, PA native Brandon Saad is going to be a big one to watch, not far from where I'm from. And like you said, they match up. They're going to match up against your top line.
Yeah.
He's going to be a player that I think can surprise some people because he is a rookie. He's going to have to put pucks in the net because no matter how far you get in the playoffs, you know they're going to match up against Kane. You know they're going to match up against Toews. Also, on the other side, I agree with you. Parise is going to have to be your player to watch. He has the experience. This is a young team, a young coach. Yes, Mike Yeo has coached a team to the Stanley Cup Finals twice already.
Yeah.
But it was as an assistant coach. It's really going to depend upon how Zach Parise plays, how well they're going to do. I don't think it's going to be enough, but I think this is going to be another one of those it's a great experience for a young Wild team, and it'll be nice to see playoff hockey back in the state of hockey.
Oh, yeah, it would be. Minnesota's such a great hockey state.
Yeah.
And plus, for the Wild, you're getting the Dakotas viewers there, too. You're getting Wisconsin, Michigan. You're getting everybody around Iowa, too, will probably be tuning in as well with Minnesota Wild fans. But it'll be a good series. Prediction-wise for me, though, I'm going to go Chicago in 5. If Minnesota pushes it, it'd go 6. I'm going to go the Blackhawks in 5. A 1.94 goals against average for Corey Crawford this season. And, they start off with that amazing winning streak. They have to win round 1. And Joe Quenneville, even though he's had a great season as head coach, he's probably still on the hot seat on this team if they fall apart in the first round.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm going to take Chicago as well. I'll go in 6 games, though. I think Minnesota does compete a little more than some people expect. They do have Parise, the leadership there. Ryan Suter's been great. They have a good goalie in Backstrom. I think he'll do well. But ultimately, I just think Chicago has too much talent for them to handle in this series. So I'll take the Chicago Blackhawks in 6 games.
I think Chicago has way too much talent, and I think they're going to be able to sweep the Wild. It's unfortunate. I'd love to see Minnesota go farther, but unlike somebody that you'll hear from tomorrow possibly with our NHL awards show, I do not think the Minnesota Wild are going to the Stanley Cup Final.
Wow.
I think they're going to get swept by the Blackhawks. It's just way too much talent on that Blackhawks side of the ice.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of talent. And the Wild, they have some talent too, but at the same time, it's nowhere near what's on the Chicago Blackhawks right now.
100% agree with you guys. Can't say any much more. It's a great team over there in Chicago, I have to say.
So, Scott, you're not predicting the upset this year? I remember last year the two of us predicted the Kings to
Yeah.
upset Vancouver.
No
we were
eight-seed
both
upsets.
right.
No
but
eight-seed upsets. I don't think you'll
not
see an
this
eight-seed
year.
upset.
You know, it's funny. You predicted the Devils to go to the
You
finals
did.
last year,
You
and
did.
I thought you were crazy. And then
I think we both did.
Yeah.
A lot of people
Did you?
think I'm
I
crazy
don't remember.
on a general basis.
Well, all right, so we're all in agreement. No 8-seed upsets this year. Blackhawks are going to be safe. They're going to roll into the second round. Now, another matchup that we're going to take a look at is going to be the Anaheim Ducks and the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit was in danger of not making the playoffs for the first time in 21 years. They do make it for the 22nd year in a row here. They're without their captain, Nicholas Lindstrom. He retired. Are they going to be able to rebound from this? Are they going to be able to actually win a playoff series?
We'll see. I mean, I look at this Red Wings team, and I think the Ducks are going to make a run in this playoffs postseason, but I'll get to them soon. I think the Red Wings, they're just in that down year for them, and you say a down year, but they're in the postseason.
Yeah.
That's just the way hockey town is over there in Detroit. Henrik Zetterberg, first-year captain. I think he might have implemented a couple new things as the captain for the Detroit Red Wings. I think they'll be fine. My player to watch for Detroit is the captain, Zetterberg. I just think him as a leader, plus you have Datsuk too. Let's see how Jimmy Howard plays in the postseason. I think this is his third trip as the goaltender for the Detroit Red Wings. So they're kind of hoping that he has a pretty good series because that's kind of their goalie of the future. If you have like Osgood and Hasek and all those great goaltenders for the Detroit Red Wings. But for Detroit, sneaking in the playoffs. Good to see Detroit in the postseason as always. And then for Anaheim, Corey Perry's my boy to watch out for on the Anaheim Ducks. You got Teemu Selanne on the team as well. Ryan Getzlaf leads the team in points. It's just, I like that Anaheim Ducks team. No one's really talking about them over there in the West. Watch out. The Mighty Ducks are playing pretty well.
Yeah, they certainly are. I would agree. They're a very, very quiet group, but they have some really good players. They have, Bobby Ryan, Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, as you mentioned. Perry and Getzlaf now have extensions, so you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yep.
And then my player to watch, though, is Teemu Selanne because, this guy, he gets older every year, but he can still play. It's unbelievable. I think he could play till he's 50. He's just unbelievable. He plays great every single year. And obviously having guys like that in the locker room is going to, make the guys want to win a Stanley Cup for him. So I think that's certainly a guy you got to watch out for, Anaheim. As far as Detroit, I agree with you, Scott. I think Henrik Zetterberg has to be that guy. He's the captain. It's a big loss when you lose a guy like Nick Lidstrom. He's such a classy leader and just has a huge voice, not only in the Red Wings community, but in the NHL. So Henrik Zetterberg certainly has a lot of pressure on his shoulders, along with Pavel Datsuk and Franzen and all those older guys. And Jimmy Howard, he also just got a contract extension, so don't have to worry about that. So we'll see how he performs in the series as well.
We'll have to see how this series goes because I think there's a lot of pressure on a couple of players for both of these teams, but I would have to say for Detroit, Jimmy Howard is going to be one of the players that he's my player to watch for Detroit. He's going to have a lot of pressure because, Scott, as you pointed out, they've had great goalies. That's what these Cup teams with Detroit have had is great goaltending. And so far, Jimmy Howard has been good in the playoffs, but he hasn't won them a series.
No.
He hasn't taken them to a Stanley Cup final. So he's going to have to find a way to get over that hump. He's my player to watch because if they are able to upset Anaheim, that would be a big series win for him. That could be a defining win for him. On the other side, I see Saku Koivu as a player that he's getting up there in age, and I think the guys really want to win a cup for him. So he's somebody that you could really see step up in these playoffs. And I really think that this team with Bruce Boudreau behind the bench could go on a magical run. He's not a bad coach.
No, he's not.
He's a very good coach. I think some personality differences was the downfall in Washington. But he's a good coach. He's got something to prove, and I think this Anaheim Ducks team is going to be tough to beat.
Oh, I completely agree with you on the Bruce Boudreau talk there because he's got more veterans in that Anaheim Ducks locker room, unlike he had with the Washington Capitals. So I think what you're going to see is the Anaheim Ducks, and my prediction is win in 6 over the Detroit Red Wings. It's going to be a good, hard-fought series. Get to watch a couple games while you go into overtime, but I think you get that firepower against Jimmy Howard that's coming from the Anaheim Ducks with Corey Perry, Teemu Selanne, Getzlaf, and Ben Lovejoy's on the Anaheim Ducks in the postseason there for old Penguin fans. So we'll see how he does over there on the West Coast.
Yeah, I was just about to say Ben Lovejoy, a guy that really had a hard time fitting into the Penguins lineup. It's been a nice little spot for him there in Anaheim, and he's done a great job, so he's a guy I definitely watch. But I think Anaheim takes it in 7 games. I do think Detroit always has a habit of making things interesting. So
Yeah.
I think Anaheim will take it in 7. I mean, they just have a lot of talent on the Ducks team, and I think they'll cruise by the Detroit Red Wings in 7 games.
I think it is going to be Anaheim once again in 6 games. I agree with Scott. Just too much talent on that ice, and I think you might see some changes in Detroit coming. Yes, they did make it into the playoffs, but if Jimmy Howard can't win a couple of games in the playoffs, I think you might see another goalie come in, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through a trade, whether it's through a free agent signing. I don't know what it's going to be. But another local connection out there in Anaheim, Josh Carter from Cal U. He is interning with the Anaheim Ducks right now, equipment staff, so I'm sure all of us would like to see him possibly go on a little bit of a run and get to enjoy that.
Certainly.
All right, moving on, an interesting matchup, and this one may come down to goaltending, whether it's good or bad. The San Jose Sharks and the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver did win their division, but it's Vancouver. There's always goaltending controversy. Who knows what is going to happen in that series? And Niemi, he's played incredible.
Well, Allison, you talk about goaltenders. That's who my players to watch are. Both the goaltenders, Schneider and Niemi. I like both of them. I'm surprised at how well Schneider has played this season because of all the pressure that you'd have up there in Vancouver with Roberto Luongo behind him. But how about the backup goaltender that you have in case Schneider goes down with Luongo? And then Niemi for San Jose, a great goaltender. No one really knows about him, but he's a very underrated goaltender, can make the saves when need be. I like both of them. And I think this series is going to be fun to watch. Now it's about, do the Sundin twins show up, Henrik and Daniel? And then for San Jose, they've struggled in the playoffs. They had their tough times. They always make it. They never really put that run together. Is this San Jose's year? Everyone always asks that. Is this San Jose's year to make that run? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough in the Western Conference this year. I think it's the more stacked standings of the conferences.
Yeah, I think this is actually going to be a really good series. I mean, it's obviously going to be good with Vancouver. And then you have San Jose. You mentioned it, Scott. I mean, every year, it seems like, maybe this is the Sharks' year, but then they seem to choke every year. So as far as the players to watch, though, for Vancouver, I think there's definitely, obviously, Corey Schneider has to be the guy. I mean, this guy has a lot of pressure on him, not only in the regular season, but especially here in the playoffs, especially with a guy like Roberto Luongo behind him. So Schneider's got to do well for this Vancouver Canucks team to win. And as far as the San Jose Sharks, I think you have to go with Logan Couture because, the Sharks have a lot of those older guys, Thornton, Pavelski, all these guys, Patrick Marleau. These guys have been there for a while, but I think Logan Couture certainly is a great young player, an up-and-comer. We've seen him do well in the past, and I think this will be his year to make some noise here in the playoffs.
I agree with you 100%. I think Logan Couture is really a player that if the Sharks are going to go on a run, they're going to need him to step up. He's not a young rookie anymore. He's not a sophomore anymore. He's growing into a little bit of a veteran role, and if he's able to go on a run here, they could really use him in the coming years to kind of show these younger players or inexperienced players, like, this is what it takes. This is what it takes to win. He trained a lot this summer with some very good players in LA and during the lockout. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in the playoffs. And San Jose in general, there's not a lot of pressure for them. As you said before, a lot of times San Jose makes the playoffs, but it's like, what can you do from there? I think this is a year that there's not as much pressure. They're playing a Vancouver team that the pressure's been on all year long because they have the talent, they have the goaltending, they have everything. But I really think that this might be the year the Sharks go on a little bit of a run. And in Vancouver, I think this might be a defining season too for them because Corey Schneider, can you be a number one goalie? Right now, I don't think he played in the last game of the season because of a quote-unquote body injury. Have to see if that affects him or not. And can you prove that you can be a number one goalie? And if so, then who are you going to trade Roberto Luongo to? And if not, then you got to pick somebody else up. So I really think Logan Couture and Corey Schneider are going to have to be two big players for both of their teams because Vancouver's got to win, and San Jose, you want to prove that you can make it past the first round.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes out of this series. I'm picking San Jose, and I'm picking them in 6 over the Vancouver Canucks because I think the San Jose team reminds me a little bit of that 2010 San Jose Sharks that made it to the conference finals but then lost to the Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks. But I like Niemi as the goaltender. He's a Vezina candidate, and I think he's playing very well this season. You just got that San Jose Sharks where they're kind of the under-the-radar team. They think they'll make a push for the conference finals. Watch out, though. It depends on what kind of seedings and else happens. If they get a good second-round matchup that they're favorable with, then, they'll probably make their way in the conference. But if they take on the Chicago Blackhawks or Anaheim Ducks in the second round, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think San Jose will compete in this series, but I have Vancouver winning in 7 games. The Sharks, I don't know if there's a huge expectation there now. I mean, they did trade Douglas Murray to the Penguins. They did trade Ryan Clough to the Rangers. They got a little bit younger. They got a couple draft picks for Murray. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with what they expect over there, but I do think they'll compete with Vancouver, but I just think the Canucks, I think Ryan Kessler may step up. He didn't get a chance to play as much this regular season. He's going to be hungry in the playoffs, so I think he'll lead Vancouver, and they'll win in 7 games.
I think San Jose is going to win in 7. I think it's going to be a very hungry series for both of these teams, as you said, but I really just think Vancouver's not going to be able to do it. I don't trust their goaltending right now, and that is so big in the playoffs. Niemi has been absolutely incredible this entire year, and there's been some talk of him for the Vezina. I just think that Niemi is going to be a stronger goaltender than Snyder is, and if they have to throw in Luongo, he's going to be stronger than Luongo too. So goaltending wins in the playoffs. Yes, they did trade away a player that I love the acquisition of, Doug Murray, but I think at least in this round, San Jose is going to get the better of Vancouver.
Well, it should be a great series. I'm excited to watch it. Sadly, it's on the West Coast, so it'll be tough to watch it. But highlights I can always check out.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be harder to get through the Western Conference than it is the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of competitive teams in the Western Conference, so we'll have to see.
There are a ton of competitive teams in the last matchup for them. Another series that should be very competitive, the Blues and the LA Kings. I love this series. I love St. Louis, and obviously you have the defending Stanley Cup champion LA Kings. I think this is going to be incredible.
I think it's going to be a great series. You got the defending Cup champs who have been playing rather well this season, and then you got the St. Louis Blues. A lot of people are interested about the St. Louis Blues. I'm actually very interested to see how the St. Louis Blues come out and play. Looking at the goaltenders between both these teams, is it going to be Elliott or Halak starting for the Blues? And then Jonathan Quick, we know, the Stanley Cup champion goaltender and defending Cup champs. Do they still have enough gas in the tank to make it through a playoff run, maybe get through the first series? But I like this St. Louis Blues team. There's a lot of good young players on that team. Backus, Vladimir Tarasenko, the young rookie from Russia there for the St. Louis Blues. Good, solid team, and it should be a fun series to watch. I have to say this series has to go 6 or 7. That's going to be the St. Louis. You call it a baseball town, but when the arena gets ready for playoff time, it's nuts there. Yeah,
it is a very underrated hockey market. I love the Blues. I love what they do over there with Ken Hitchcock. He's been a great coach for that team. Great fans over there, obviously. But as far as my players to watch goes, St. Louis Blues, I'm going to go with Jay Bouwmeester. This is a guy. This guy has played so many games in the regular season, has not played one playoff game yet. So this will be his debut in the playoffs. He's going to be hungry, obviously. They picked up Jordan Leopold as well. So definitely watch those defensemen out there for the St. Louis Blues. But then for the LA Kings, I got to go with Jeff Carter. He's been great ever since coming over from the Flyers. Had over 20 goals this year. He's going to do it again. I think he'll do it again. What he did last year, he really succeeded and helped the Kings win the Stanley Cup last year. I think he's going to be huge again in this series too, though.
2 of my players to watch. One, David Perron. He's a player that has battled some injuries the past couple of seasons, but I really feel like he's going to be able to come back and play well for St. Louis, and he's going to have to. They're going to need scoring because Jonathan Quick's an incredible goaltender. On the other side, on the LA Kings, Drew Downey is a player that I think he needs to have a good postseason. If he wants to, first of all, of course he wants to have a good postseason because of the fact that means his team goes far. But on the other side, if he wants to make Team Canada next year, if the NHL players do play, he better start proving right now that he's A, mature enough, and B, good enough to make a very stacked Team Canada roster. And I think he's going to be motivated. I think he's going to prove that he has matured. He's not that young kid anymore that likes to go out and party and maybe doesn't take hockey too seriously. And he started showing that last year as well. But I think this is going to be a defining year for the LA Kings, whether it was a fluke last year, the Cinderella story, or if they really are a team that can compete in the NHL for years to come.
Allison, I'll bump on that Olympic talk that you're talking about because Dustin Brown wears the C for the LA Kings. If he wants to wear that C for the red, blue, and white,
Yep.
And he's got to have a heck of a playoff run. And Jonathan Quick, I'm pretty sure he's going to be your #1 goaltender for the United States with Ryan Miller being backup. But if Dustin Brown wants to make a case for being the captain of America for the Olympics next year in the Olympics in Russia, he's got to have a great postseason.
Yeah, that's great points by both of you. Haven't
Thank
gotten
you, Andy.
the Olympics agreement yet, but
Right.
hopefully that'll happen because there are a ton of players, and it's going to be really, really exciting to watch. Dustin Brown, all these other guys, and there's going to be a lot of competition on all these teams because there's just so many great players coming up in the NHL right now.
There really are, and I really think that these playoffs, you're going to see who's going to get invited to camp, who's not going to get invited to camp. And that can make a big difference. And if your team can win the first round, could give you a little bit of an advantage.
I agree.
Certainly.
With everything you said, Allison, I agree with everything you just said.
So who do you guys have in that series?
Oh, the LA Kings, St. Louis Blues. I forgot we didn't pick this series.
No, not yet.
I'll go St. Louis Blues in 6 over the LA Kings, and I think it'll be a great, hard-fought series. And I'm going to predict Game 6 overtime winner for the St. Louis Blues, and off the stick of Bacchus for the win and the advancement in the playoffs.
I'm going to take the Los Angeles Kings. I think the reigning Stanley Cup champions continue their success in the playoffs. I think they're a team that's just kind of built for the playoffs, honestly. I think they're going to win this one in 6 games.
I think the St. Louis Blues are going to win in 6. I like the Blues. I picked them to go last year to go to the Stanley Cup final. I feel like Ken Hitchcock's a great coach.
Yes.
It's a great hockey city. And you have some good players. One person we haven't talked about a whole lot is Halak. Another good goaltending, get you far in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to go clear to the finals, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I do see St. Louis winning this one in 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly make that argument. I think St. Louis is another team that's really built for the postseason, and they could make a run here as well.
Well, speaking of making of runs, we are going to talk now about our champions. You'll see a little bit more of the awards, as I said in our other show, the award show that we're going to shoot tomorrow. But for right now, the three of us are just going to discuss our Eastern Conference champion, Western Conference champion, and, of course, Stanley Cup champion. So out of the East, you guys said it. You think it's a little bit easier than the West. The West, very competitive. But out of the East, who do you think is going to make it?
I think it's going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins. I just think, I said that last year too, but I feel a lot more confident this year knowing that there's just so much depth. I mean, you look at the top line there. You probably, when you do have Sidney Crosby back, you may have Pascal Dupuis, Jerome McGinley on that line. Then you have Malkin, Neal, and Kunitz on the second line. Third line is going to cause havoc. I mean, no one's going to want to play against Brandon Sutter, Matt Cook, and Brendan Morrow. And then you have a guy like Jussi Jokinen, Tyler Kennedy, Craig Adams. Guys like that on the fourth line is unbelievable. There's just so much depth on this team, and they have so much depth that they're able to match up with every team, in each series. I mean, if they want to play physical, they can put in some physical guys. They have so many NHL-capable players that can fill these roles. So, and obviously they have Marc-Andre Fleury and Thomas Vokoun right behind him. If Fleury does struggle a little bit, so I just think there's no way getting around this Penguins team. They have just so much depth at every position. I mean, it's going to be really tough to beat them in a 7-game series. Yeah,
you're right, Andy. And I'm going the Boston Bruins to come out of the Eastern Conference because I really do like this Boston Bruins team. They remind me a lot of the 2011 team that made that run. Tuukka Rask, I think, is the goaltender of the future for Boston, one of the next great goaltenders that you'll see here in the NHL. But they just got the depth. They play as a team. It's pretty much the same team, just with a couple more added pieces into it from the 2011 run. And the city of Boston, with the Celtics not doing so well in the NBA playoffs, and it's still the start of baseball season, I think you're going to see the Boston Bruins lift that city up and take it through. I say they get past their first-round matchup against the Maple Leafs. Then I think they'll take on the Canadiens in the next round, beat the Montreal Canadiens. And then whoever they face in the Eastern Conference Finals better watch out because this Boston Bruins team will be on a roll, and I can see them in the Stanley Cup Finals.
I do think Boston's going to go far, but I'm going to have to go with the Penguins. Too much talent on the ice. And I love the trade acquisitions. I love Brendan Morrow because he brings that grit, kind of like Gary Roberts had. I love Jerome McGinley because he's talented, and, I mean, obviously his chemistry with Crosby. If you watched the Olympics, you saw that. That's intimidating anytime you can put those two on the ice. Doug Murray was my favorite acquisition because, first of all, I love defensemen. Second of all, that brings that Hal Gill type of presence to that defense. Plus, you have Mark Eaton. Marc-Andre Fleury's playing incredible. I think just too much talent on this Penguins team, and I think the only way the Penguins lose is if they beat themselves, which might happen, but I really think that the Penguins just have too much going for them right now, especially thinking it's Sidney Crosby back, who I think is going to be very motivated to take a run at the Stanley Cup.
Hey, he's gone through a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So he's definitely going to be motivated, and we've seen what Sidney Crosby can do when he's motivated. So honestly, I think that whole team is. I mean, after what happened last year, that was a huge disappointment. And the thing with the Penguins is they really believe in that system, Dan Bylsma's system, and you can just tell that they're very confident, and they're not going out, they're not riding too high or too low. They're somewhere in the middle, and that's what you want in a playoff team. And I think that's why they'll come out of the East.
Once again, I'm the lone guy on the set that doesn't pick the Penguins.
But you were right last year.
I was right last year. The New Jersey Devils. Too bad they're not in the playoffs this year.
Pick them this year.
You can't pick them this year. Because you picked Marty Brodeur last year. That was your big reason. Marty Brodeur
I
won last
thought he'd carry them, and that's why I'm thinking, because of what happened to Boston,
That's
they'll
lift.
Argument. And you see that happen.
Oh,
I always say this when I talk about the 2001 with the New York Yankees making that run through the postseason, eventually losing the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now you might see that happen with the Boston Bruins. I say might. It'd be pretty cool to see.
It would be cool.
If the Pen, I will root for the Pens, but if they get knocked out, I think a lot of people around Pittsburgh will eventually will go to the Bruins as their rooting fave.
I would completely agree with that. I think you're gonna have a lot of people supporting Boston throughout the year. I mean, we already saw it in Philly where the 3 stars were, I think, the Boston police officers, the Boston first responders, and I think the citizens of Boston. So definitely gonna get a lot of support, and we'll have to see. The East, maybe a little bit of an easier run than the West. The Western Conference, though, a lot of teams that could come out of it, and we'll have to see who comes out of that one.
Yeah, I'm going with the Anaheim Ducks, guys. I think the Anaheim Ducks are going to come out of the Western Conference. They got veteran leadership on their team. The Western Conference is tough because in the East, you have like the Islanders and the Maple Leafs and the Senators, teams that are just getting in and getting the feel and the wetness of the playoffs. Well, I'm going with the Anaheim Ducks. I think they got the veteran leadership, and I don't think Chicago's had such a great season, but I think they kind of gassed out a little bit with that winning streak early on in the season. And the Ducks match up, I think, better against the Chicago Blackhawks if those two teams meet up in the conference finals. And what a conference finals that would be!
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are hoping for that to be the conference finals. But I'm going Anaheim Ducks to meet the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, I certainly like that pick. That's a good pick there. Anaheim Ducks, they have a great team. I did go with Chicago. I kind of hesitated a little bit because of that winning streak. I was a little afraid, but they have so much talent. And I've been wanting to see the Pens and Blackhawks meet in the finals. That's been kind of my dream matchup for a few years now. So I would love to see that happen. I think that would be an unbelievable series. I mean, just that would be two All-Star teams battling. Just so much star power on those two teams. So I'm going to go with the Chicago Blackhawks. I know Corey Crawford may have proven himself so much, but they're certainly going to have to rely on him. But I do think the Blackhawks will come out of the West.
I completely agree with you. I think Chicago's going to come out of the Western Conference. I mean, you have the scoring. You have I believe they won the Jennings Trophy. I think they announced that yesterday for lowest goals against average. Ray, Emery, and Crawford split it. So we'll have to see. But I really think Chicago just too much firepower. Yeah. You're the President's Trophy winners. You've proven you can go on long streaks. And if they were still in that 15-game winning streak coming into the playoffs, I'd have a different opinion maybe. Yeah. But it was at the beginning of the year. They had a little bit of time to kind of cool off. And, again, I think that motivation factor. Is Patrick Kane going to prove that he's not a little kid anymore? I'm sure he wants a letter on his jersey for Team USA as well, just as much as Dustin Brown does. And he's proven so far during the regular season that he can handle it and not get into trouble. And I think he's been great this year. I think he's probably been their best player. Yeah,
he certainly has. Patrick Kane, his hands are unbelievable. Yeah. You see some of the shootout moves that he does. It's a shame that no shootouts in the playoffs. Yeah. I'm actually kind of glad about that. But Patrick Kane's certainly a fun one to watch when he's on a breakaway.
Yeah, I mean, I like your guys' pick with the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm surprised you're both going 1 seeds coming out.
Yeah,
from the West and
I
East.
hesitated a little.
But I mean, I like it, though. I like your picks and everything. But I just think out of the Western Conference, it's going to be really tough to see who comes out of that. That's because it's just such a deep conference.
So
you got a lot of playoff experience. The only team really not playoff experience is the Minnesota Wild sneaking in there at 8.
Yeah.
The reason I know that I went with the 2 number 1 seeds was I was looking at the standings and I looked at goal differential. Yeah. And it was incredible. Both Chicago and Pittsburgh were plus 40-something. And I think the next was Anaheim, and I think plus 32, and everybody else was in the plus 20-somethings. And I was like, wow, that's just, these two teams have both been completely impressive. And I really feel like if they're not going to make the Stanley Cup final, it's going to be because they beat themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
They have too much talent, too good of coaching. I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat them unless there's a major collapse. And at that point, I think, Scott, you said Joe Quenneville might feel a little bit of pressure. I think Bilesma might be feeling that pressure as well because they have the talented roster. The owners pay the money. The GMs build it. You got to find a way to get it to come together.
Yeah, there's certainly no excuses this year. I mean, what Ray Shero did. I mean, he's definitely going to win GM of the year, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, has to.
Just unbelievable getting UC Jokinen, for a conditional pick. I think it's 7th rounder. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, the guy has been great for the Penguins, but I mean, Dan Bilesma has a ton of pressure on him after what happened, last year, the year before that. Obviously, they had, when Crosby and Malkin were out, that was alone. That was just a huge accomplishment just to get to that point. But this year there's certainly no excuses. There's going to be a lot of pressure on both coaches, the Blackhawks and the Penguins. So it'll be interesting to watch. And these two teams are going to be on the microscope the whole playoffs. Everybody's going to be watching them. So all eyes are going to be on the Penguins and the Blackhawks.
I can't wait. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's the best time.
It is.
One of the best time of the year. Though October is my favorite month of sports, I do really love the NHL playoffs. It's a fun time.
Is a lot of fun. In the Stanley Cup final, Scott, who do you think is going to take home the trophy?
Well, I have the Ducks and the Bruins battling out for the Stanley Cup final. I'm going to go the Anaheim Ducks will raise the Stanley Cup above their heads once again. Timo Sulani getting another ring, and I do like those Anaheim Ducks, guys. I think they are going to pull it out 0-6 over the Boston Bruins. I think Boston will just run out of gas. They might take probably maybe a game, maybe take an early 2-1 series lead, but I think you'll see Anaheim fight on through. And no one's really talked about the goaltender for them, Hiller. Jonas Hiller is a very good goaltender, very underrated. He made that run in 2010 with, I think, Switzerland in the Olympics. So watch out. Goalies get hot, and I'm thinking Anaheim. Corey Perry going to win the Conn Smythe, too. That's a little preview for the NHL Awards show.
Well, I had the Penguins and Blackhawks, as you did, Allison. I do think the Penguins will take it. I think it'll be definitely 6 or 7 games because that is going to be a great series, as we talked about before. But Penguins have a ton of depth. They have the thing that makes a difference for me is the gritty forwards that they got. Yeah. Jerome McGinley, he's a guy that's not afraid to drop the gloves, and then Brendan Moore. I mean, he's just a guy that he's going to get in your face. And the Blackhawks, I don't think they have as many guys like that. Certainly, the Blackhawks and Penguins are built on skill and speed, but I think those trade deadline acquisitions that Ray Shero made is going to make a huge difference, along with Douglas Murray, because I'd be scared if I was going to that and he was coming at me. So I think those guys are going to make the difference, and I think the Penguins will take the cup once again.
I agree with you. I think the Penguins are going to take the cup again for the same reasons that you said. Plus, I think Sidney Crosby is going to come back and be on a roll. I think they're going to win it in 6 games and bring the first trophy home to Consol Energy Center. So we'll have to see how that goes, though. But I completely agree with you. They have a lot of grit this year, which is something they didn't have last year. And I think as a team, they're more mature. They realize that they have to play defense to win. They realize they can't lose their heads like they did against the Philadelphia Flyers. Yeah. They realize that now, and I think you're going to see a lot of maturity and a lot of leadership because you have so many potential captains in that room. Even though they've said it is Sidney Crosby's team, you still got that veteran leadership, and I think that's something they were really missing last year.
Yeah, they certainly were, and I think defense is a big difference this year. You got guys like Murray and Mark Eaton and guys like that, veterans. Mark Eaton obviously knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup with the Penguins, and he sees a lot of similarities with that team and this year's team. So I think defense definitely makes a huge difference because last year we saw the Penguins, sometimes on the power play, they would have 5 forwards, and that's something they cannot do anymore. So I think they got to focus more on defense. We know what they can do offensively. If they can keep the puck out of that, they're going to be fine.
Andy, who do you think your Conn Smythe winner is going to be since Scott so chose?
Well, I think Sidney Crosby is going to be it. You said, obviously he's very motivated. Evgeny Malkin won the Conn Smythe in 2009, but I think this is Sidney's year. He's been through a lot. He's certainly going to be motivated, and we all know how he is in the big moments. So I think Sidney Crosby will take home the Conn Smythe.
I agree with you 100%. I think Sidney Crosby is going to take home the Conn Smythe trophy, and I think we'll have to see if he plays in the first round or not. We still don't know, but I think you're going to see a guy that's very motivated because can't be too happy about losing that Art Ross trophy that was pretty much his. I mean, the fact that it took St. Louis
25 days,
month to come back, I think you're going to see a very, very motivated Penguins team in general, too, because they still remember that loss to the Flyers. They don't want to relive it either.
Yeah, and Jerome McGinley remembers his Stanley Cup Finals loss very well against the Tampa Bay Lightning, so he's going to be motivated. Brendan Moore, the same thing. Murray, I mean, all these guys have played only for one team in their whole career until they came to the Penguins, so these guys are going to be motivated, and they're here for one reason. They're here to win the Cup, so I think they'll do that, though.
Absolutely, and getting ready to wrap up here, so any last words, Scott?
Nothing really. I mean, I just can't wait for this playoffs to get started.
Yeah.
It's a lot of great first-round matchups. From the East, my favorite one's going to be the Rangers-Capitals. I think that's probably going to be your best one out of the East. And then probably out of the West, it's going to be LA and St. Louis because you have a growing hockey market in St. Louis. Plus, you saw how LA got around the LA Kings. See if they can continue that to grow down there in Los Angeles. Should be fun. Let's see if we maybe get some upsets in this first round, too.
Yeah.
Be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Crazy if both 8 seeds won over the number 1 seeds.
That would,
there go your guys' Stanley Cup picks.
Yeah, that would be the end of ours. But I think it's been an awesome year. Obviously, the lockout, only 48 games, but we saw a lot of hockey crammed in, into a small period of time. So that was fun. Another thing I like is we're seeing a lot of teams that may not have had a lot of support out of the lockout in the beginning, but now that a team like the Islanders or the Maple Leafs. Well, the Maple Leafs are always going to have support, but the Islanders, there was a lot of times where that arena would be empty, and now they're sold out for the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, for the first couple games at least. So it's nice to see some fans kind of getting into these small market teams again that haven't been in the playoffs. So it's nice to see those teams get back into the postseason.
I cannot wait for some of these matchups because you have teams, like you said, that are going to pack these buildings. I can't wait to see the energy in Toronto, their first game. Their first playoff game in how many years? I know people were joking that it's their first playoff game in HD television.
Yeah.
Minnesota, can't wait to see the state of hockey. Just craziness, I'm sure, is going to ensue there. Can't wait to see that. And Pittsburgh, always a fun atmosphere.
Always.
Hopefully can make it out to a game or two this year. But a lot of fun, and it's the playoffs. Who knows what can happen? I mean, the last time the President's Trophy champion actually won the Stanley Cup, was in 2008. So who knows? Anything can happen. But definitely probably my favorite time of year.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the NHL playoffs. I mean, you look at NBA, LeBron James, Miami Heat, they seem to be cruising, but it's not always like that in the NHL.
Yeah.
So some of the number one teams, they could falter early on or even later. So I love the NHL playoffs. I'm really, really excited.
Well, that will do it for our playoff preview. As we said, we do have an awards show coming up later on in the week, so make sure you check CUTV for that. For Scott and Clint, for Clint in the control room, Scott and Andy, thanks for watching. Have a great night.